Catching Up on the Drift, Part 6, Competition or Compassion. The narcissist, in establishing their new world order, where their global corporations are king and queen, rely on creating fake problems or exaggerating very minimal problems. In focusing on these fake problems, real problems are ignored and stagnate. A prime example of this is prohibition on drugs. Prior to drug prohibition, most societies did not have a drug problem. The overwhelming problem was alcoholism. The idea that one could defeat alcoholism by banning alcohol was always ridiculous. America soon witnessed how criminalized alcohol suddenly delivered a variety of warring gangsters into their society. It was obvious that switching prohibition from alcohol to narcotics was to pour oil on already troubled waters. Usurers like to create trouble, and troubles deliver power and profits to the narcissist. A war on drugs gives their police powers to stop and search suspected members of the public, or else break into their homes or put them under covert surveillance or frame innocents. Because narcotics are equally, if not more addictive than alcohol, there is an incentive to get as many people hooked as possible, be they rich or poor. Prohibition against alcohol created a corrupted establishment in which every tier of society was implicated and involved in crime. A monster has been created. The anti-hero of the gangster worlds was promoted to movie star and presented as an option for an impoverished youth and all its state-programmed narcissist and psychopathic psychologies among them. Many of those involved in establishing prohibition genuinely believed it was for the good of society. In their cognitive dissonance, they did not want to understand that it was their lawless banking system and its establishments of power who were responsible for creating the economic, social and political depressions that drive people to drink. Banning the drink merely magnified the injury. The way to address alcoholism is to focus on the reasons why people turn to drink. It is noticeable that the remnants of heavily oppressed native populations commonly turn to drink. Clearly, they are oppressed. They've been conquered and controlled by an essentially alien consciousness that has judged them inferior, savage and heathen. They are left feeling alienated in their own country. They are robbed of their cultural identity and all of its history. Alcohol numbs the pain of an oppressed and negated intelligent consciousness. According to the narcissist, all such people deserve little empathy from among the invading consciousness. The natives, they claim, are simply losers in the natural competition of life. Indeed, the invaders themselves commonly suffer alcoholism due to the fact that their own lands of origin have equally suffered the same fate of being conquered by the usurer narcissists, a fate they sought to escape by fleeing to America. This assumption that a competitive human society is natural falls apart under the beneficence of universal law, where fitness to lead or manage is measured according to an individual's natural or learned skills of intelligence, and intelligence is measured according to one's capacity to take everything into account, empathise with all life, and live compassionately. The competitive society demands a blinkered approach to life and encourages crime. Winners are commonly among those who manage to get away with crime and who are instead rewarded for their crimes with increased wealth and power. Because of this, by today, the very worst psychologists and criminals are to be found at the highest echelons of power and wealth. An impoverished man is jailed for smoking a harmless herb, while the banking money launderer and fraudster is deemed too big to prosecute, while the nuclear corporation is quietly permitted to poison our skies, lands and seas, while the politician is left free to pollute nations with depleted uranium, and while the psychopath is socially revered along with their sycophant narcissists. What kind of society Could universal law deliver? How would it work? Why do we need it? Here are a few ideas as juxtaposed against the present illegal law system. In a lawful society, psychopaths pose far less of a problem, for there is no incentive of rewards of the criminal acts, because upholding the law is actually far more rewarding. Narcissists and covert narcissists are instantly recognised and understood as being in need of psychiatric attention. The public are educated and aware enough never to place such individuals in a position of power or authority over others. There is no place for political parties under universal law. There is simply a variety of individuals from whom the public may choose as leader, according to the levels of confidence that those people inspire by way of his or her ability to most successfully deliver and uphold a lawful, compassionate civilization. Crime decreases in a lawful society, and this again is a threat to established powers. It equates to less funds for those earning profits via police, jails and courts. In a competitive society, a majority are handicapped according to the traditional and thoroughly disproven and yet covertly continued judgments against race, religion, class and gender. Many people are thus prohibited from entering the competition much beyond the level of earning a slave wage. Furthermore, the goalposts are regularly moved in favour of the most privileged competitors. Children's rights and needs are casually dismissed by the competitors, whose main interests in children are focused on measuring and indoctrinating them with false, disproven ideologies or accounts of history. Children are for sexual abuse or for profits via either their parents, abuse of their parents, or selling products specific to their needs or indoctrinated wants. Women are relied on not only to manufacture the next generation of obedient slaves to usury, but also to earn profits for an employer in order to pay the costs of raising a child. Psychological, emotional and physical costs related to pregnancy and childbirth are not taken into account. The woman, as producer of the next generation, receives very little, if anything at all, from the bankers, corporations or their governments. Her children are essentially a freebie, delivered to be controlled by usurers for purpose of sustaining their criminal tier system of power and wealth. Women also are expected to pay for their menstrual needs, and even are burdened with guilt and shame because they menstruate. The fact that having an ability to produce the next generation relies entirely on the fact women must menstruate is casually ignored, despite its being vital to maintaining human life. Usurers foster rapid population explosions, which are directly related to the lack of power and choice and access to contraception that is granted or denied to many females. Under universal law, women are free to choose when and with whom they have a child. They also more commonly choose to have less children, or else none at all. A lawful society fosters balance. Under universal law, women have additional rights related to the fact they have a womb, which gives women additional needs, pressures and choices. It may be necessary to terminate a pregnancy due to the fact a woman has been raped or is at that time unfit or unable to take on the responsibilities of parenthood. 15 weeks is the limit for termination of pregnancy, because after this time, brain activity renders the fetus as fully conscious and therefore is protected by her human rights. Late abortion may only be performed with support of medical professionals, confirmation of fetal deformity, serious disability, life-threatening impacts on mother's health, or a high risk of late miscarriage. In all such cases, the fetus must be humanely euthanized and will be named, registered and interred as an individual. The same will apply to natural miscarriages over 15 weeks. The narcissist usurers commonly speak out against abortion, as once the temperance movement spoke out against alcohol. Again, The issue is highlighted not to address the underlying problems of why, but to gain power, judge, criminalise, legitimately express hate and inflict punishments. It is noticeable that very few of the pro-lifers are interested in establishing the kind of world where rape, poverty, emotional or psychological illness, abandonment, abuse and lack of education are not regularly leaving women with little or no chance but to terminate their pregnancy. Because they know they cannot give a child the love or stability at that time in their lives, and neither do they trust the state or adoptive parents to truly care for and not abuse their child. Universal law also gives children additional rights via child protection directives, i.e., on reporting crimes against themselves, onus of proof of innocence is on suspects. That is not to say suspects are automatically judged guilty, but that suspects need to be thoroughly investigated and arrested. Child protection directives not only serve to protect children, but to prevent crimes against children. With no child protection directives, no economic security, few rights, a divided, judgmental world built on a polluted and raped planet, the most intelligently aware females choose not to deliver a life into such misery and risk, and many among those who do, in spite of their cognitive dissonance, under spell of wedded bliss or worldly security, or else by force through living unprotected in poverty, will suffer severe postnatal depression. It's what happens to war heroes who receive no recognition for their valour, and who instead are treated like an animal bred to fight, and then judged if they fight and judged if they don't, and even they must work to pay for and produce their own weapons and fund themselves through battle. The fact that soldiers are doing exactly that is not so blatant, because if it were, soldiers would naturally reason that now they have a weapon, they might as well turn their weapons on the slave owners instead of their fellow slaves and their children. A child is a potential weapon, a threat of consciousness to the usurers. Unhappy, abused and vulnerable men and women can be relied on to raise vulnerable, abused, unhappy children. The usurer's world naturally nurtures weakness to exploit towards sustaining its profits. The usurer world conspires in every way to maintain the psychological and emotional divides between man, woman and child. The pain of childbirth equates to experiencing 50+ fractures. Childbirth is painful because the human female is not only giving birth to a biological body, she is birthing also universal intelligent consciousness, which needs a very large head to hold a larger brain. The narcissist world refuses to fully appreciate the tremendous effort of pregnancy and childbirth. What is the reward for her labour? Apparently, women just want a baby to play with like a doll. The toy human is her reward. But that is a lie, because a child is not a doll, but a developing human psychology and physiology. Motherhood includes the hard work of raising and funding a child. She is the one who will suffer judgments, suspicions, and carry the weight of emotional attachment and traumas of parenthood. The reward of a new human to exploit for profit and pleasure is delivered to the usurers, who think it is perfectly normal for women to act as baby-producing machines. The truth is, even a factory machine receives more respect, attention, interest and investment than a human mother. It is the user-inspired technology or design that is labelled the miracle. A baby, they claim, is just a result of a happy coincidence in a chaotic universe. Universal law recognises that a woman's body is employed by life the moment she conceives, and every time she menstruates, i.e., women are not required to work for an individual employer during menstruation and pregnancy, and not for the first 2 years after giving birth and thereafter in part-time employment until the child is age 8. Mother may transfer her postnatal maternity rights to father or another family member or trusted friend. Fathers are entitled to 9 months maternity leave, which equates to the last 3 months of pregnancy and the first 6 months after birth. Usurers will claim that all such maternal and paternal rights will lead to a huge population explosion. Instead, the opposite will occur, and this is due to adequate education, which teaches children about their bodies, how they function, as well as the psychological, physical and emotional needs of a child, along with the responsibilities and necessary commitment of parenthood. When humans thoroughly understand a child's true needs for undivided attention and veritable sainthood, coupled with an in-depth understanding of the weight of conscience, the time, attention, effort and emotional turmoil, less people choose to reproduce. Universal law operates on the principles of factual knowledge. We understand the nature of quantum energy and that our biological body is simply the physical host to a quantum light body, which is eternal and which can be diminished in power according to how far the biological body has operated outside the law. When the body operates lawlessly under guidance of maligned thoughts / spirits, present understanding as provided by Jesus and other shining ones of history suggests that the light body is separated from the host and absorbed by deception into a criminal fiction, which on death prevents ascension into the quantum hard light paradise and or reincarnation into human life. Forgiveness allows people who have committed crimes to learn and do better. Forgiveness is granted to they who admit their errors or crimes, who are remorseful, ashamed, embarrassed, and who are willing to change, compensate or atone for any damages levied by their crimes. In a lawful society, crime is recognised as a symptom of physical, emotional or psychological dysfunction, or else the criminal is himself a victim of crime due to abuse of his or her human rights. It is understood that rights, truth, evidence and facts are the primary treatment for those afflicted, while actual brain damage is recognised as a physical disability. Universal law requires all who are willing and able to work for an employer no more than 3 days a week. The remaining 4 days are for family, eco and community projects, further education and faith. It is permitted that employees will choose to work, e.g. 6 days or nights in a week, and then take 8 days vacation. No job shall require more than 10 hours work in a day, except in times of an emergency, in which case the extra hours worked will be deducted from work hours on another day. Families are granted 2 2-week holidays per year, along with holidays related to specific celebrations, equinoxes, Sabbaths, etc. Childless individuals are free to choose longer working weeks in order to build up vacation time or for travelling abroad for long periods on a world tour, etc., or to engage in a course of study. In this way, unemployment is rarely a problem, and the workforce is generally more competent, diligent and happy in their businesses and jobs, both for an employer and in the local community. All the corporations are run by humans, and on acceptance of truth and law, those corporate people will find ways to facilitate and establish the necessary changes. Every private business or corporation will be required to register with an independent nation. Global corporations are forbidden as a threat against life. Taxes are paid by the employer via, e.g., 50% of annual profits, and by each community according to their hemp and energy production. Every community shall grow hemp and or other produce. 30% of the annual total is payable as tax, either by way of produce or income. Produce may include energy contributed to the national grid, in return for which the local authority will receive a sum of money to be paid by the government. Hemp will supply individually owned and national eco-industry with a product from which can be made a wide variety of goods and foodstuffs for both human and animal use and consumption. Community-grown food and other community produce shall not be taxed unless a community produces neither hemp nor energy. Community taxes will fund the wages of local authority employees, who will be a large or small body depending on the numbers and populations of the communities they serve. They will provide local services, parks, local building projects and leisure. Every member of each community will elect local authority representatives and will be consulted and involved at every level of planning and spending by their local authority and government. Government shall also be elected by the people. Due to the immense benefits provided via payment of taxes, none shall begrudge their payments, and indeed they will endeavour to be productive as possible, as each worker understands they are receiving double rewards for their labours, both by wage and by right. Pride will be replaced by satisfaction when taxes equate to national insurance. A lawful government runs a lawful bank. Money is printed on strength of e.g. hemp or silver. Global banking is prohibited as a terrorist threat. Every individual shall hold their money in their country of origin. Those of dual nationality will hold their money in the nation of residence. Initially, a government may print as much money as it needs to fund and equip every town and city with means to live both productively and self-sustainably. All monies between one nation and another shall be of equal value on exchange for a foreign currency or goods to that value, according to the levels of universal law that nation has established. Ultimately, every nation will realise that lawlessness delivers poverty. The government is responsible for upholding universal law and maintaining education, healthcare, defence, police, social and other services like public transport, energy supplies, secure mail collection and delivery. Most communities will provide and maintain their own eco-energy supplies, as well as contribute to or draw from the national power grid. Communities hit by natural disaster will receive help from the government and local authorities, who will assess and provide for their needs. Struggling communities will be professionally assessed and guided toward implementing any necessary improvements. In times of national distress, other lawful nations are ethically bound to assist. The government, the people, and all their authorities will be vigilant towards ensuring that only the fittest of human intelligence is granted power. The media shall be independent and community-run in some cases, and is required to keep the public informed and also entertained. Usurer ideologies and opinions, however, are not permitted to be represented in the media as a choice or as news, except in recognising the fact that such ideology is a threat to the child. Every child under universal law is VIP, and their needs are considered primary. All nationally owned and run services and industries, except for education and healthcare, which must include dentistry, shall run to earn a surplus which will be saved to cover leaner times and or utilised to upgrade and update machinery, etc. All individuals are free to operate their own cooperative and private business ventures. Communities may trade or donate between one another, and or the local authority may trade or donate between one local authority and another, and or with communities of other nations. Local authorities will provide walk-in therapy centres for those who are suffering bereavement, perverse desires or depression. Anyone assessed as posing a serious risk to themselves or others may be reported and detained for more intensive therapy or treatment. Those who pose a sex risk to children will be confined to isolated, walled and gated communities, which will be largely self-sufficient and managed by a government-run body of professionals. As human societies become more highly developed via universal law, the cultural corruptions that nurture pedo-sadist desires will be greatly diminished. When human consciousness is enlightened about the truth and miracle of life in a naturally intelligent and magical universe, present drives for success in terms of material wealth and power will vanish. People will find a natural joy in life consciousness which as yet has been denied. The common female afflictions of premenstrual tension and postnatal depression will be vastly reduced due to present-day pressures and underlying judgments against femininity being eradicated. Neither shall males feel a need to compete with one another for wealth and power. Being fully educated about their own humanity, incidents of rape and other sexual crimes and violence against women will become increasingly rare, as males will commonly respect themselves and others and will choose potential mates with great care, being as they desire only the most willing, suitable and competent partner as parent for their child or children. A woman will be recognised as another and equal side of man. Sexual activity below the age of 18 is discouraged and is recognised as a criminal act if one party is over the age of 18 or under the age of 16. Any pregnancies arising from the underage intercourse shall proceed or be terminated according to the wishes of the mother-to-be, unless there is a medically diagnosed risk on the health of that girl. The father shall then be equally responsible as parent. Every child has a right to know their father, and it is a criminal offence for a father to neglect his parental responsibilities. A child born at express wish of a mother who is impregnated by rape, or who for whatever reason cannot identify the father, shall be informed from birth that their father is unfortunately too psychologically ill to be a parent. In some cases it may still be possible to connect the child with other relatives related to the father. Children shall not bear nor be judged for the sins of their father. Where possible, a photograph and biological details of a rapist's father will be recorded. Rapists will be incarcerated for a period of up to 10 years or life, depending on their progress through therapy and a fair assessment of risk. A lawful, intelligent society understands that sexual crimes are the most severe and pose the greatest risk to human development and spiritual consciousness. Suspected police-charged criminals will be tried in a court of law, and they will have legal representation toward proving either their guilt or innocence. If a legal representative has evidence to condemn their client as guilty, it is their duty to share that with the court. It is against universal law to knowingly defend a guilty suspect, or else to represent them in any way beyond assuring that their basic human rights are upheld and that the most appropriate actions are enforced. The present world, created by the psychopaths and narcissists who sadistically orchestrated and enjoyed and have profited from events of 9/11, has psychologically enslaved its populace into believing that life under the beneficence of universal law is a fantasy, an impossibility, irrational, restrictive, hippie, and even unfair. The usurers have been successful in their psychological enslavement of humanity by usurping religion and twisting the concept of God into both a fiction that can be easily ignored by criminals and also a belief rooted in fear and dread that will control the non-criminals. Empaths are persuaded they need to beat their children via a misinterpretation of a biblical quote, i.e. spare the rod and ruin the child, which in reality means spare universal law and ruin the child. The law is the rod, and a lawless society delivers a child into ruin. Children are not ruined by respect, mercy, acceptance, tolerance, kindness, patience, praise and joy, all of which equate to love. Children are ruined by abuse, ignorance of their true needs and rights, judgment, negligence, neglect, and criminal privileges or deprivation in an imbalanced world. Once humanity finally accepts once and forever that we are the creation of an intelligent and lawful universe, in which death, decay and renewal are an eternal and fundamental aspect of universal reality, people will lose their morbid fear of death. People like Prophets Jesus and Prophet Muhammad will be recognised as shining ones who knew that universal intelligence and law is grounded in compassion and abundance, and who arrived to lead us into life of lawful bliss via the creation of heaven on earth. It will be every human's pleasure to create, work, contribute and solve problems. Every child born will be received into this world as a returned family member. Every human will know we are here to defend and protect, nurture and care for life on our planet. Our technology will reflect our levels of sanity within universal intelligence. Once humanity has established universal law on earth, the lions of human consciousness will sit peacefully with the lambs of human consciousness. Both lion and lamb exist within every human psyche. Some are more lion, others are lamb. The usurers have understood this for centuries, and they have utilised the lions and encased them into egos who are rewarded for hunting the lambs as prey. The majority of humans are predominantly lamb. Under universal law, lions become the dread of every criminal, for they are quick to protect and defend the lamb. They are the most passionate, and their passions are a gauge of alert, i.e. an expression of wrath indicates a dire crime has been committed. Usurers, under usurer law, lions are often forced to being lambs, and lambs forced to be lions, which delivers a generally miserable, accusative, suspicious, judgmental and selfish social consciousness, as a majority feel at odds within themselves, inwardly insecure, or else falsely confident and incompetent. This leads to negligence, lies, theft and fraud, false witness against others, and incrimination of innocence. It also leads to rewarding and glorifying certain individuals who are in reality not at all worthy of any such social acclaim, e.g. a knighthood for paedophile Jimmy Savile. Those who are genuinely worthy of social acclaim will always deliver heightened joy and rewards to life. Neither do such individuals specifically strive for fame and fortune. Rather, it comes to them by their rights of being exactly who they most truly are.